Welcome to the Verses of Life, where military resilience meets professional clarity and faith overcomes chaos. Get battle-tested wisdom with biblical insight to triumph through growth. Now for your host, Dr. Veronica Sites.
Welcome to the Verses of Life. Today's episode is a pilot because listeners have questions, you want to know the mission, and I want to provide the answers for you because who this is for is important. It's also more specific as to why the platform exists at all. The Verses of Life is decision-making, choice, evidence-based of guests that are living in a place of triumph and have expanded from surviving and now live a life of thriving. I'm on a mission. My name is Veronica Sites. I am a doctor of traumatology, crisis response, and something that isn't very sexy, but it certainly solves a big problem in the world: suicide prevention. The mission of the Verses of Life is to sustain life, bringing guests that add value and from a place of triumph, provide visual evidence as well as stories of how they got to places of a pinnacle position from places that they've walked through, whether it's a pit, whether it's a trial, whether it is tragedy, trauma, or places of service. My number one target avatar is first responders and military, because that is who I am in service still. I continue to serve as a chaplain in the Texas State Guard. The story of my life really encompasses the fact that I was raised up in the environment that all the men in my life, brothers, uncles, sisters, I didn't have, but everyone in my family was a first responder or law enforcement. So in the mercy of God, he found it fit that I would be raised up in the case study of what it is like to be in the midst of what are responders, what comes home with responders, and learning along the way. Before I was educated, before I was degreed and highly credentialed to do the things that I do, my mind, body, and little self growing up absorbed a lot of things, understanding what trauma can be, does, and now as an adult, over 30 years of serving in crisis response as a responder, I have learned the importance of evidence-based science research, neuropsychology, and what is possible to accomplish through peer support. I am very passionate about presenting guests to you that will speak into places where somebody might actually be suffering in silence. And what I've learned is that when I can present and position someone to speak to somebody that's in the trenches, there is a bridge that gets built between the trench and the triumph. And my goal as the host of Verses of Life is to present the opportunity that there isn't just hope. With hope, there's help. It's a matter of letting you hear, letting you see, and knowing who, what organizations, and how they help, because the Verses of Life is all about helping my listener. I'm going to ask some questions of myself. The pilot episode always answers the questions of this. So what's my mission? My mission is to transform and to speak life into places of pain so that purpose can emerge. Because one thing I know, for 30 years, the position and the role that I have served as a chaplain, dearly, the endearment term is I'm the chappie, the happy chappie. I added to that what is the actual situation of that. I'm the happy chappie that people call when things get crappy. But the thing is, what is important to know is that we all face trials of many, many different kinds, but how we get to places of triumph does require a journey. And not everybody knows how to take that journey. Not everybody knows where to start, and not all have understood the value of peer support along with professional counseling, licensed professionals that can help. So my role for many years is I chose not to be a licensed professional because I've always been on the front lines. I've been in the cars. I've been at ground zero. And what is needed there is not a counselor. What is needed there is a responder that stabilizes and builds the bridge of connection from stabilizing to the handoff of those that can readily walk somebody forward, but also that is somebody that has built the type of connection that I still get calls. And occasionally I run into those that have survived very extensive and traumatic events that they remember the person that got them through it. And that's not what's important. What is important is the mission is to sustain lives. So becoming a lifeline is a part of the mission. How I do that is I create tactical connections between my guests and listeners. And that is because the Verses of Life is not about me. It's about the guest. It's about the person that hears it. It's about piercing the darkness and allowing somebody to see that there is the light of hope. So question number 2, who's my ideal listener? Well, my ideal listener, branding and as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, this is the question I get often. Who's your avatar? Who's your target audience? Well, there's a target, but let's remember that on a target, there's a bullseye, there's an outer circle, and there's an extended circle. There's nobody in life that isn't touched by some level of trauma in their life that does not need help and hope somewhere along the way. But my bullseye target is the responder, the one that served in military and veterans, with the front line, the family. Because one thing I have learned to appreciate is as responders, we live the culture, the protocol, and are prepared by skills, drill, so that the wheel is conditioned to run in. And home front is ready for you to come home. And it's never about who. What I focus is on what is coming home. Because who we're waiting for and the responder that's waiting for who's at home waiting for them. One thing that gaps the transition from service and surviving to reunification is a readiness and development program. So I am the founder of Post-Traumatic Stress Development, which is a journey of peer support, collaborating with licensed professionals as needed to build a community that is called Home Front Valor. What the mission serves and the tactical connections we are creating is to do better on bridging the gap so that readiness becomes the equipping of what needs to be known for those that need to know. Now, we are a country of freedom, and the warrior should have the same ability to live in freedom. So what I do is my ideal listener is the first responder, military, and veteran. Keeping in mind that there are outer circles and there's extended circles. It's not limited to that. I bring guests that represent entrepreneurship, small business ownership. It can be a mom that's in business. It's never a chat. It's actually a challenge to the one that's inclined to listen, because in being inclined to listen, you might just hear a relatable connection that resonates. The purpose is to resonate. So who is my ideal listener? The one that actually hears. And that sounds very general, but the specialty is sustaining life. It's always the same mission. It's always the same bullseye target, because one thing I know is that lives have more value than oftentimes the narrative in here tends to get somebody in isolation to start to believe. So let me just tell you very clearly, what are the topics? The topic is central to one thing. We build on one foundation. This is a faith-based mission, while it is not a preaching practicum. All things start and change when we deal with the BS. And that's where this chaplain starts. Belief system. What one believes is going to impact what one does and how one decides. So we do bring the story in. The platform does not only allow, but promotes and challenges. Tell your story. I am a very active platform and media personality that is part of Christian Women in Media. So nothing escapes who I am, what I stand for, and what I do not stand for. Wishy-washy doesn't work. If we have a sewer cycle that's going on here, the negative stinking thinking, one thing that I know is it's got to become clear, it's got to become mission focused, and it's got to make connection with mind, with body, and with the spirit of man. Because you can't treat and help somebody become whole only addressing 1 or 2/3 of the individual. What one believes does impact how one lives. And I challenge our listeners, don't just survive, learn to thrive. The brain that keeps us alive is the one that can be trained to learn to thrive. So the next question that I have for myself and for you is, what are the conversations that we have? Well, they're real life conversations. They're value added conversations, and they are conversations that are going to pique your interest because you might be the one that is relating to the guest. And the unique perspective is always lived experience. While I am very big into research and evidence and database, evidence-based research, evidence-based is limited to we can really get stuck in a box of bias, a box of criteria that says it's got to fit here so I can check the box off. As founder of Post-Traumatic Stress Development, listen, I took on a challenge. I'm challenging the stigma. The D in PTSD is problematic. It's problematic because it creates stigma. For responders and the likeness thereof in military, active duty, or veteran, we don't want to be diagnosed. No one wants a diagnosis of disorder. Here's the problematic part of D. Disorder really comes and flies up against to how we are trained, the skills we have gained, and how we actually go in to fight and stabilize chaos. Disorder is where we run in. So to be given a diagnosis of a disorder really contradicts and semi-sabotages. And I'm going to say semi very loosely because that's what has been unknown and really unaddressed. And I am not afraid to step into that. The D has got to be reframed. We've got to use new language. We've got to be neuroplastic in our approach of language. So I created the development because to stabilize something with medication or a certain protocol that does not lend to the fact that peer support is a powerful engagement, and even more so a readiness that is going to help somebody that may not go seek a professional or seek professional help before they talk to a peer or before they talk to somebody that they can identify with. So that being said, that is my story. I have lived experience. I have been touched by suicide on far too many levels, both personally, losing family members. And the thing about it is, I'm not here today without the evidence of there's a reason, there is a season. People that are stuck in the pit are facing the despair that can lead to taking the one life they have, which is a very, very precious gift, need the evidence to be seen and to be heard. So the platform is all about sustaining life and providing help. So after someone listens to an episode, what can they experience? What can they hope and what can they feel? Most of the time when people listen to the episode, it provokes thinking. It creates connection, and all of our guests are given the opportunity to provide their contact information, the way that somebody can follow up with them. And also the reason that is because I can't solve everyone's problem, but I can create the platform and invite the connectors to speak to the person that is in isolation, that is uncertain, that may be in a very complex situation, but to facilitate what is possible often pierces what needs to be pierced. Because one thing that I learned in my journey is it was not that I lost hope. I didn't know what help was available. I didn't know how. Okay, that's going to sound a little contradicting, but let me just tell you, if you've never been, or some have been, the recovery process is seeing, knowing, hearing, and actually having access to what does help look like. Because what I've learned over the many years of working with individuals in recovery of being touched by suicide, whether that is losing a loved one, whether it's a survivor of an attempt, is this: the majority of individuals that actually act didn't want to die. They just didn't know how to live. And so through my story, through the evidence of my life, and through my boldness as I'm created, I'm not afraid to step into that, because I want people to learn how to move beyond surviving, to learn to thrive. Because the gift that you're given of life, it isn't meant just to survive day by day, incident by incident. You're meant to learn to flourish and thrive. You're meant to be brilliant in this world. And everyone has the capacity in it. Because I liken it to this: diamonds don't happen without pressure. It's in the pressure that somebody needs to hear spoken life into dark places. And that's the verses of life. I invite you on the journey. I invite you as a guest. If you've got a message, if you're part of an organization, if you're building for expansion in eternity, this is the place for you. We have a seat for you at the table. We have a conversation that's waiting to be heard, and you have a story that is invaluable. So I'm your host for the Verses of Life, and I'm going to show you some evidence of some things of the journey, because the journey has been long. I do write books. I do speak to groups. I do training. Again, the founder of post-traumatic stress development, that's the journey. One of the layers is adaptive psychological first aid, because what warriors need to know, as well as their frontline needs to know, is what do we do when what came home shows up. So here's some of the books that I wrote, and we'll get back to that in just a moment. So the first book that I wrote was Rachel, Did You Know? You see, I've been touched by sibling loss multiple times. Conflict resolution solutions, because conflict, whether in relationships, in work, or internally, are a misalignment of getting into places of peace and progressing forward. Pain has a purpose, and it's not to sit and dismantle. Pain's purpose is to bring purpose of emerging. It will always serve well, because pain can be destructive and it can be productive. So conflict resolution speaker is what I've been known as. I have rebranded, and I'm rebranding as my own name, Veronica Sites. That launch book came with tactical tenacity. You see, life is not about resilience alone. Resilience is a component that every warrior brings to the table. Resilience can be compromised, and it's in the compromise of resilience that we find too many in despair, without the direction of how to get out of that pit and how to progress forward. You see, what I've learned to value is endurance and perseverance. So we're calling out of the light into the darkness, the hope that is the help for individuals. My turning point book was Recovery of Suicide at Church. Love Me to Life. You see, we're called to love one another. And in this day and age, there's too much divisiveness and too much of antagonism that is really separating people, that we could almost ask ourselves, where's the love? Love shows up on the Verses of Life because it's about compassion, it's about caring. And there are two pillars to what I do. I do help individuals that are emerged adults and adults quite often and more often than children. But my background in children's ministry and in outreach does create a pillar on this end. You see, I've written a children's book. It's a #1 bestseller, and it creates the bridge. The Quiet Mushroom is all about values. It's all about helping the adults that are raising the children that in this day and age are facing things we never had to. So packaging the purpose of sustaining life has been a challenge. The Verses of Life is your encouragement of one micro decision at a time will take you in the direction that it needs to. But I'm going to give you this vision. We can start here, and those micro shifts can move up in either direction. But it's when we come into alignment that we start to make the adjustments where we go up from where we've hit rock bottom. My name is Veronica Sites, and I do invite you on the journey to the Verses of Life because we all face decisions, and we're all one decision away from a radically different life. Join me on the journey, and I'll see you at the top.
This has been the Verses of Life, where warriors and professionals live life on purpose, silence doubt, and lead with action. Stay strong, stay grounded, and remember, growth through pain reveals a greater purpose. Stay. The world needs you.